Okay, now let's start putting the next 90 days together. And if you would have checked the horizontal 8, as we can call it, your right hand side diagram. Now, once you have started your journey on Rise 1 and you started understanding what Rise Up model is all about, then if you go about going through the entire circle for next 90 days, it'll look like as follows. After the introduction and your clarity on how things are going to progress, the next immediate level is to get your niche clarity. Okay, and what does that mean? Now, if you remember, we discussed finding a niche, your micro niche, and then your super niche, right? There will be some validation processes going forward as well, but this should give you a broad-based capabilities from a skills and your passion perspective to bring about your niche that you want to target. All right. The next element that comes about post that is going to be the result planning, right? The whole Rise 1 process. The Rise 1 process will practically bring about a business model in the niche that you want to, and to have at least one digital asset in your mind that you want to create. Okay. Now, please also understand during the entire journey, there will be tweaking of both the digital asset as well as the business plan, right? Because once you're beginning, there will be various tweaks which typically happens in any kind of a startup model, all right, or a startup mode of activities. So it'll go through series of activities until it's perfected during the process, but your process is not stopped because of this tweaking. Okay, very important point. So once your business plan is in place, right, you have a single digit kind of digital asset in your mind that on basis of which you started making the business plan. The third or the fourth element would be to focus on creating of this digital asset. Okay, and we'll go through a process called design thinking, etc., which probably would have been touched upon, and to some extent, but we'll go in details going forward. And with virtue of that, you probably might end up creating something called an MVP, which is a minimum viable product of any asset that you have chosen in the beginning. Okay, and then while that's going through your tweaks and your understanding and how that's going to progress or look like in the future, you, on that basis, to get a test run done, you start doing something called a funnel process, right? Here again, there will be a detailed one that we'll go through what it means to a point where you start creating a funnel. But to check things out, you might want to put your MVP out there to start getting some early feedbacks. That's the purpose of this funnel. Okay, and this is within your intrinsic kind of circles. That means the people whom you know can give you feedback, right? They're not totally strangers to you. So they know what you like, they know what you're capable of, and in the process, they will give you feedback on what they feel of your digital asset. Okay, the first one that you drafted out. And this, the feedback that you receive, you'll start kind of inputting it into your digital asset to start now maturing it. Okay, so that's the purpose of this funnel. And in the process, the funnel will consist of, funnel typically is the sales process, as you would know, right? It starts from some traffic activity. That means you have certain people or your inner circles or outer circles or your other peripherals around you who start kind of consuming your assets. That is a traffic mode, which results into a lead. That means few of them, right? Suppose there is 100 people traffic coming in, you will funnel, or maybe 50% of them will go about using your product or not using your product. Out of the 50%, the people who are using a product might proceed to the next level or not proceed to the next level. That's about another 50%. And so you start funneling that activity per se. Okay, so that's a part of sales process. We'll go in very deep details in the subsequent lectures that we come about for funnel building. But the purpose in the next 90 days is to build up some intrinsic people whom you know as a list, if you don't have one. And wherever you categorize yourself, right? Either you're a novice or you're a kind of a pro or a master. Yeah, one of those three categories. But you start building a small funnel of people who have started looking and giving you feedback. That's the purpose of this funnel. Okay, and you start imbibing that feedback that you receive in your digital assets. Then you're maturing it, right, until the time it is matured enough to launch it. So then you launch your asset. Okay, once you launch, you will have to create something called a lead magnet. A lead magnet is nothing but something to attract other audiences besides your intrinsic circles. Okay, so this could be like a free course or a couple of lectures free which talk about the course itself, and things like that. And sometimes people give free, if you have written a book of sorts, or you have a series of courses out of which you want to give some free, and so on and so forth. Those are lead magnets. Typically, magnet in the sense they attract the kind of leads that you want. Okay, and these are focused ones because you don't want anybody and everybody consuming it for the sake of and not doing anything about it. But these are the ones that you will have something called a persona of, that the kind of people you're targeting, and you make that lead magnet for that purpose. Okay, so then this happens, and incentives could be free. These are the kind of incentives you give, right? It could be free, something that is free, something that is at a discounted rate, or something of that sort. Okay, so those are lead magnets. Again, we'll go into specific detail and categorization of lead magnets, how and which ones you want to use and not use, and so on and so forth. Okay, so with that said, so you launch your first one. And then you get into your setup systems, right? That means while all this is happening and people are you're trying to get the kind of people whom you want to attract to start consuming your product, you're setting up your systems. Now you understand, you have your basic systems to start making this, right? You remember those concentric circles that we've been talking about, right? This will result in the basic level, or maybe at best the second level, depending on which category you are in, and you start setting up your systems for automating such activities that you've done up till now, right? Right from understanding the rise up model, that is a startup, that is the start button that you see, to the point where you're completing half the circle, the left hand side of the circle of the 8, and now you're setting up systems for automating. Okay, again, each of them is a course in itself, right, which will go into details. So once you do that, you then move into building up your social group, right? You remember, now you have an intrinsic group, and you're now building an extrinsic group by virtue of lead magnets and launching your asset and so on and so forth. You start building a social group, right? And once your social group is activated of sorts, or getting in the build-up process, and you're finalizing your specific people that you want to target, in the process, some of them would want to have one-on-one consultation with you. And that is what the free consult, it could be free, it could be charged, depending on how your asset is, and various other criteria which we'll bring about. And by the time of this 90 days, you should have finished at least 50 of them, right, by virtue of doing various things that are mentioned through. Okay, so once you're clear with the rise to, all this will follow immediately for you in a very clear and precise fashion how you're going about. But what we've completed up till now is the fashion of how we bring entire thing together, and these are the kind of several steps that you need to take. Okay, so about 9 to 10 steps to be taken one after the other, so that you progress to a point where consultations are happening parallelly. Now, in any startup mode, as you would have understood by now, all these elements I talked about, right, maybe the first 3 and maybe first 4 that we talked about on the left hand side of the 8, the horizontal 8, we have finished about 4 steps to a point where asset is getting or your product is getting created, right? Now after that, everything runs parallel. The next kind of 6 steps go almost parallel. So these 10 steps, the first 4 go one after the other, so that you come to a confirmation of what you're going to kind of produce, and then everything goes almost parallel, right, until the point you finish these in parallel activities and conclude with those specific goals. Okay, there will be specific goals at the end of 90 days, which will showcase to you yourself that you have almost finished 90 days and you're ready for rise 2, right? Otherwise, there might be some qualification criteria you want to bring about. Okay, so this is what is going to happen with the culmination of what all we discussed up till now. Okay, and following these 10 steps until the point you finish those 90 days and you meet some specific goals which are part of your business plan already. Okay, for the first 90 days. Clear? With that, let's jump to the next one, and I will see you there.